Before moving to our ACL, so we need to define our code, and we will define our company, category, and periods. So we will define the company model and the category model and the period model. Also, we will make some changes to our controller, and we will define our the mm, method, so where we will call our queries to by using our query. So why we are defining our code? Because it is the need to define that code to our request that we will make. So before define that code, let's create an other super admin, and we will see what we are going to build and what we want to achieve. So at the moment you may bit confused, but as the series progress, so your confusion or your concept may be clear and as crystal clear. So let's sign up a new user, and let's say it's admin, and so user rana.shada the trustcool.edu 123456 123456, and the phone, okay, the address will be the same. Okay, register, 123456 123456, choose the country and choose the state and register. So we register a new user, we can check in our database. So let's refresh. Here you see our new admin is it's a super admin that is created, and its parent ID is 0 because it is a super admin. And when I go to the company ID, so company ID is null and the company name is null still. So this user has no company. That's why the default company name is displaying. And we can check. Okay, so we will change this when we in a profile. Okay, if I click on department and period, so the periods are displaying for this user, but the categories are not displaying for that user. So this user can create a period, although he has not created a company, but he has been shown the companies as well, that the other user, which is Rana.Shahzad Outlook.com, that user has created these companies. So why these companies are being displaying to this user that is an admin? So these are the glitches, and we have to define our code. So we will make sure that the only the user that belongs to this company should be the company that belongs to a user should be displayed, and also the departments also and periods also be belong to this the user should be displayed in. So when we it can create a period, so he has not created the company yet. Okay, if I go to our terminal, so we say let's control P and find our model period, and also model period, and also the controller, so which is categories. Remember, categories period controller is displaying this layout, department and period. So in a categories period controller, here in the index we will check if auth is a facade, If auth user and helper is a user is a helper method. If auth check company underscore id is equal to null. See in our database, if company id is equal to null, so we will display a message and we will return redirect to the root. We will send it to the root, which is a company dot index. Make it in a string, company dot index root, and with the message where we say error, and the error will please create slash or select your company first. And if we find our root web.php, so we have a company.index root with root and the default page of your dashboard. So we will send it to a company, this company.index page, and here we will see that. Okay, save it. Let's refresh our application, and so companies are being displaying. So, but the message is displayed, please create or select your company first. So when we click on departments and periods to create a periods and department, so this user has, this super admin has not created the company first, has not created the company, so he need to this user need to create a company first. And in a company we are displaying all the companies that the other user has created. So let's fix it first. Okay, so company controller. Okay, in our let's open our now company model. In a company, and open our company's controller. Okay, in a company's controller, see we are getting all the companies. We are not checking so where the auth user is currently logged in. And if we go to with, so we say where id auth user id. So save it. Let's check if there is an error. So call to undefined function get auth One minute. In a companies, we have a user ID. So let's say user ID. Okay. So user underscore ID is the auth user ID. Then get, and let's refresh. So see, now the companies of this user is gone, and he cannot go to a department and periods. So if I change company, there is no list of company. Now I change the user back to the original Rana or Outlook 1 2 3 4 5 6, and here this user has the companies. So this user has the two companies, online Rana and a Fantech, and this user has the periods as well as the categories. So let's jump back to the admin user, which is Rana the Trust School 1 2 3 4 5 6. Login. Okay, we have achieved this company, and now we will refine our company model. So because why we are refining it, because we need to use the raw queries, and where we will use a multiple queries inside one raw query, and it will fetch to all, to budget. And this company will also take care of the user ACL. So this query will also take care of other tables. So in that model that we are just only getting the company, so this query may not work. We use different query ways, the Laravel way as well as the DB raw queries and the sub queries to find it. So hope so it will make sense when the series progress and when we further go on. So you will understand the concept. Okay. Now let's do our company model, and here we will create a method. So we'll create a method public function where user. Okay, so we will find the user ID. So if auth user ID in the user table, so find the ID and kept in a user. So we use a if condition. If auth user parent ID not equal to 0, then do this. So then we will assign this user variable, this one. So initially this has the ID of current this. If also user parent ID is 0, if we go to our database, so user, when we create a user, see its parent ID is 0. When the parent ID not equal to 0, so this will become, when we create a ACL and the admin user, a super admin user can create a user. So the parent ID of the new child user of the admin user become the parent ID. So suppose if you create a new user, so this new user will have the parent ID of, if this one user super admin 2 create a user, so its parent ID will become 2, and we need to check it. So then if auth user parent ID not equal to 0, then what will be the user ID? So then auth user, parent ID become the ID of the user. So in that case, we have no parent IDs in our table. Parent ID is 0, so we have no sub-user of superadmin user. So this time the user ID of the user become this one, auth user ID. So when we use a child user of the superadmin user, so when superadmin create a child user, so then the parent ID of the user become this user. So when we create a ACL, you will understand the concept clearly. So right now, maybe you become confused. Okay, we know need to select all the records from our companies. So we'll use db raw. So in that function, so first check this one, and then we will say return all the records. So we use a db sort, and we say select method, and we say db raw, and in a db raw we create our query in that string. Just save it, and we say the raw query that select all from companies table, and we will use as C. So we are now creating an alias of this companies table, so C. So it's a simple to use a single word, other than we need to create every time we need to use the companies, and we have to write the companies. Okay, select all from companies as C. So C is the alias of companies, where user ID in companies table is equal to this variable that we have created right above. So this one user table. Okay. So okay. Select all from company. Company is the alias where user ID in company, companies table, this user ID is companies table will be this user. So this is the currently logged in user, and if we have a child user, so super admin, so if the child user logged in, then the parent ID of the child user becomes this user ID. So save it, and now we need to go to our company's controller. Here we are accessing this throughout this method. Let's comment this, control L to duplicate first, and then we will comment the first one, and here we say the method that we have created in our company, which is a where user. So copy it. So we say this companies, and the method is, now we will find this one. So this companies, this is the instance of a company model, and here we say because this instance get this method from companies model, and this model is right now this query, and this will work the same that the above, that the previous query is working. Okay, and let's check to our browser, change the user 1 2 3 4 5 6, login. Okay, in a company class app auth not found. So here in a model, the auth is not found in a namespace, so we need to include it. So illuminate support facade auth, and also we need to include the DB facade. So DB facade is included. Save it and let's refresh. So see, now we are getting the companies from our newly created query in our model by using a method, and here we in a controller, so we are accessing this method, so we are accessing the data. So stay tuned, and in next video we will create for our categories as well, and then we will create the periods, so then we will shift to our ACL.